Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Sim Experience South Africa. My name is Johan Karinas, and I'll be taking you through tonight's Mazda MX5 races. We're racing Mazda MX5s here at the KYALAMI circuit in South Africa. In the commentating booth with me for the Div 2 race, and I'll run you through the program in a bit, is going to be Dennis Mitchell and Mornay Deploy. So why don't you guys just quickly say hi?
Hi.
Yeah, so
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
sorry, I caught them off guard there for a bit. But yeah, so it's going to be fun having them in the Div 2 race with us, and then from there we'll be going on to the Div 1 race where they'll be competing. So you'll be able to put some voices to some of the cars that you'll be seeing on track. Having a quick look at our weather. If I can get everything to work together. So 22 degrees Celsius air temperature, 36 degrees track temperature. The skies are nice and clear, and it's 3 p.m. in the afternoon, so the track's looking very good for racing. The tires won't be complaining too much, so everything looks good from that perspective. Going to our track map and just quickly having a look there. So a lot of you may be familiar with it if you're the South Africans that are watching this. If you're from overseas, this might be a bit of an odd track for you. And so for this track, we're going to go from the grid. I just need to confirm that we're racing it the same way around as on screen. Yes, we are. So first we've got the King, that's going to be flat out, then running into Crawthorne and Yuxke Sweep. That's going to be some interesting corners, some heavy braking into Crawthorne, some nice overtaking opportunities. Yuxke is going to unsettle the car a bit, not too much. It should be nice and fast with these cars. Then Barbecue, a nice 90-degree left-hander that's going to provide ample overtaking opportunity. Sunset, a bit more difficult with these cars since you don't have you're just relying on mechanical grip, so it's going to be really difficult to manage the speed through there. Clubhouse Bend, sharper than a 90-degree left-hander, a very, very tricky corner to get right. Heading into the S's, also going to be all about managing your speed. Leeuwkop, a very, very tight corner, almost a hairpin. That's really going to test these drivers' control over the car. Then through the mine shaft and the Crocodiles, again, nice difficult corner, but you can see it kind of opens up, so provides a few overtaking opportunities and makes the driving just a bit easier than the Cheetah King. Although I haven't seen that, I've raced on an older version of this track, so we'll see how that treats the drivers. And then Ingwe, that's going to be a very tricky corner, very sharp onto the main straight, and you're going to have to nail that corner to get the exit speed that you need to overtake people around you. So we've got 2 minutes left of qualifying. I wanted to take you through a flying lap, but unfortunately we don't have the time for that, so I'm just going to resume broadcasting as usual. So at the moment we only have 2 valid laps from the drivers. It's going to be Andre Hildebrandt and Rian van der Westhuizen clocking in a 2:06, and the faster one going to Hildebrandt. So both of those drivers are doing quite well in that regards. Expect some of the drivers to also put some of their times up on screen. It's just a bit tricky at the moment. If you do make a mistake on the lap, it's a 2-minute lap, so it does take a while to get a nice solid time up there. We've currently been riding on board with Sean Oliver, who's still yet to put in a valid lap. James Leach Jr. putting in a time on screen at 2:06, 863. And then Sean getting going as well. So we'll see what happens there. Just talking with the drivers we have with us, so Dennis and Mornay. Dennis, I think we can go with you first. How's the prep been for this track?
Not too bad. It's fixed setup, so you just kind of just jump and get familiar with the car. Just as many laps as you can, really. That's about it. There's nothing to do other than just time in the car.
And you, Mornay, any special preparation, or was it just getting used to the car itself and the feeling of driving it around this track?
Basically just what Dennis said, and also just getting used to the power on the curbs. The curbs will get you if you're not careful. So I've actually just been trying to run some laps and get those curves right, especially through the S's. But yeah, other than that, like Dennis said, just put laps in and then hope for the best.
And yeah, I can definitely think a few of these drivers are going to hope for the best as well. So, just quickly looking at the qualifying times, we've got Andre Hildebrand still sitting on pole position, then Sean Johnson with a 206.771, Jan van der Westhuizen still sitting solidly on third, James Leach Jr. Fourth, then Willem Stein, a bit of a new name for me, that's going to be a 207.095 for fifth, on board with Sean Oliver at the moment. He's sitting at 6. Then we've got Dani Stander, who's still also on track. He's going to be in 7th with a 207.988, unless he can improve on this lap that he's currently busy with. Then Marius van Wyk sitting in the pits with a 208.252, so he's going to be sitting on 8th unless someone jumps him. Matt Williams, position 9, and he's also out on track, still trying to improve his lap as it stands. So qualifying is officially over. We're just waiting for those of the drivers still on track to finish. Matt Williams still has a bit of the lap to go, but I don't think he'll be improving. And to the top of the queue goes Sean Johnson with a 205.117. So I can imagine him being very, very happy with that one.
I think that's his fastest lap to date.
On my timing software, it's definitely his fastest lap, so it's looking
perfect time.
It's looking very good for him. And then Elke Brunga, he's going to round out the grid in 11th place, so he's just still getting a few corners under the belt. And at some point, the timing or the server will kick us over into the gridding procedure. So we should be ready to get going. I'll quickly jump us over to ads while these drivers are still making their rounds, and then we'll be back with our race start for the second division and the first race of that division. See you guys in a few minutes. welcome back everyone. So we've got the drivers on the grid and ready to go. The lights are up, engines are being revved, so just waiting for that race director to get everything going. So 3 lights, 4 lights, 5, 6, and we are off. So everyone getting a very good start. 3 drivers abreast, and a bit of a slower driver at the back end. As we round the corner, unfortunately contact between 3-4 of the cars, and that's going to be Sean Johnson that survives that. Willem Steyn, Maurice Verweyck, Matt Williams, Gavichos, all of those moving up as well. Hilke Vrunga also surviving that initial chaos at the start, and we've gotten going through the first few corners of the track and continuing on as well. Nice little battle here between Maurice van Wyk looking at the back of Willem Steyn, trying to see if there's an opportunity to go past. Through Sunset they go, and this is always going to be a bit of a tricky corner. Car drifting out wide, using all of the track to get that momentum going through the turn. Up in front, Johnson still comfortably leading. Further down the pack, everyone kind of settling with a few gaps in between. So Van Wyk is the closest to a passing opportunity here. You can see him running the number 77 car as he tucks in behind and follows Willem Steyn as they continue. Steyn also looking at the back of Sean Johnson. Steyn running the number 44 car. Now, I can't imagine why he picked that number. No more driver through on the track, so we almost completed a full lap and survived. And just a little bit of action between, Andre Hildebrand looking at the pass here for Sean Oliver. And he might have also passed Robert van Westhuizen by there. So through the crocodile kink, or cheetah kink, sorry, and unfortunately way too much curb there for Oliver, and he's going to drop back, and Hildebrand and Van Westhuizen continuing the battle. Hildebrand running very deep, and that's going to provide Van Westhuizen with a very good draft going down the main straight as he follows Hildebrand. Hilke Vrunga also doing well in position 6, and I think Dennis, you might. Oh, and just a quick, Van Westhuizen making a very brave move on the inside of Hildebrand, and unfortunately making contact. So I think those drivers are going to be battling it out here. But before we had some action on the screen, I wanted to ask you, Dennis. I know that Vrunga is actually a bit of a special racer tonight, so. You probably have a bit more information to provide us in that regard.
Yes, well, first of all, Hilke is our proud sponsor for the series, Alwyn. That's all him. And he's also doing his very first online race tonight. So, very, very good start so far.
And he's going to do really well to avoid these 2 cars behind him. Hildebrand and Van Westhuizen duking it out through the turns, and they've got James Leach Jr. also joining them, as unfortunately a bit of contact there. Hildebrand, the one worse off for it, as James Leach Jr. moves on the outside. Vrunga defending his line on the inside, and that's going to force Leach Jr. to drop back a little bit and plan his attack again.
I was actually going to say now, guys, that Hilke Vrunga actually made a smart decision at the beginning of the race there, just taking it easy from the back, because I think he's made up already six positions, so looks like he's doing pretty well there.
Driving and thinking at the same time, yes.
Yeah, that's kind of what you need to be very successful with sim racing, especially at the hobbyist level, if I could put it that way. None of us are really world-class drivers, unless someone's taking a big vacation at the moment. But there are still good drivers, but mistakes do happen, and you need to set yourself up for that. And I think Virga had a good start in the sense that he was able to avoid the chaos of the main stretch and that turn 1. And that served him quite well. So Van Wyk here look all over the back of Willem Steyn and trying to look for opportunities and kind of getting close at some stages, but not really finding the opportunity to pass yet. So it's going to be very tricky with these cars. While the MX5s are a bit of an easier car to drive, they do have a lot more time under the brakes, and I think you guys, Dennis and Monet, you can probably attest to it. It's one thing to have a car that's kind of stable under braking. It's another to maintain as much speed through a corner when you're trying to do some decent laps. So, what do you guys think about what someone like Van Wyk needs to be thinking about at the moment?
Just keeping a calm head and not getting too erratic with the controls. It's all about being smooth in these cars and avoiding the curbs with full throttle.
Yeah, no, we've seen a few people spin out with that as well. Van Wyk desperately looking for opportunity on the outside, unfortunately not getting it and having to drop back and continue to fight. Sorry, Monet, you wanted to say something?
No, I was just saying, like what Dennis was saying about Van Wyk here. He's in 3rd position, close behind Steyn in 2nd, and I see Johnson has just crossed the finish line now, so there's still a good chance these three are going to come together soon again. So just got to keep calm and wait for the opportunities.
Definitely, and it looks like Van Wyk is just showing the nose, but on a bit of an odd side of the track. Steyn running very defensively, parking the car on the apex. But now Van Wyk has the inside or the chicane, unfortunately being forced to the outside now. As they go through the corner and still side by side, very close together. It's going to be very interesting going into sunset. Less than a tenth between these two drivers. Van Wyk on the outside and trying to look at running a bit of a faster line. And he's definitely using a lot more of the track. Steyn very quick to assume the racing line.
Yeah, Van Wyk was very smart there in trying to take a wider line and try and get the undercut there, but unfortunately not working for him right there.
Unfortunately, not at that time, but he's definitely creating opportunities for himself, and he's putting a lot of pressure on Steyn. Running a bit of an interesting line across the curb. Definitely trying to optimize his exits as best as he can. In the middle back, we can see Hildebrandt and
Williams has just dropped down. I think he may have had a little incident there.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, he's spun into the wall.
So Van Wyk still looking very good here. He's staying on Steyn. Unfortunately, a little bit of contact. No harm, no foul. No one spun around. But he is going to have to be careful that he doesn't spin around his opponent and cost both of them a bit of time. Now onto the
racing close quarters though.
Definitely, it's already been very, very high quality racing, and apart from the start, everything's looked really good.
Can see Morris getting a bit tail happy as well, so obviously using a bit more throttle.
Yeah, you do need to be careful. You can see he's running a much wider line on entry, and you can also just see how much time that's costing Steyn. Fortunately, he's got a bit of a kink to his advantage, so it's swapping around the sides of the line, so he's not given up the inside line due to the corners yet. But now running side by side.
Is he going to try the cutback again?
It does look like it is. He's got a much rounder line. He's tucking on into the inside, but that's the nature of the course. He's now stuck on the outside again, so that positioning is a very tricky thing for him at the moment. But he is now positioning himself on the inside line. Into the braking zone, the fully alongside. And that's going to be the overtake made on Willem Steyn. So Maurice van Wyk moving up into second position. But you can see the battle has cost them dearly, with Sean Johnson 10 seconds ahead.
Some good racing there by those two. Good respect through those last few corners there. I like
After all the action, James Leach has set fastest lap of the race as well.
Yeah, and he's fighting for third position now. So Willem Steyn's troubles aren't over yet, as he's now got Leach Jr. to contend with. And at the moment, unfortunately gets spun around by Leach Jr., so he's not going to be happy about that one. Sean Oliver...
Go ahead there, sorry Johan.
I want to say Sean Oliver also on a bit of a drive back, as he's fighting through the middle of the pack. He's got Stander also following closely behind him. But the middle of the pack also settling a little bit. And this is probably the closest battle on track at the moment.
Well, what's it, about half the race gone now? There's 9 minutes left to go, so there's still some time for plenty of mistakes and plenty of overtakes. These guys are battling for points, basically for overall position in the overall title. So Div 1 and Div 2 are both actually fighting for the same title for the championship. So every point that these guys can get is going to be very important for them. So this is why we can see some intense battles going on.
And speaking of intense battles, one that kind of snuck by while we were looking elsewhere on track is going to be James Leach Jr., who's snuck by Marius van Wyk. Moving up into second position, but as I say that, he completely overcooks it into the corner, drifts into the gravel and able to recover it on track. But he's now got both Hildebrandt and Steyn coming into view behind him.
Yeah, if you're not careful, this little MX5 can snap on you pretty easily. If you oversteer a little bit too much, the snap oversteer is quite hectic. Happened to me a few times.
Yeah, he did very well to catch it. I think the recovery on that is rather impressive, and it is probably going to count in his favor. But he needs to be careful that he doesn't try and overdrive it now to regain that second position, but maybe rather think about securing the race, as you've only got, I think it's 5 more laps to go. Hildebrandt also now looking at a possible position here if Leach Jr. isn't able to maintain his pace from before the slide. So it's going to be interesting to see whether the gap shrinks between Leach and Van Wyk, or whether the gap between Leach and Hildebrandt is going to shrink. So looking further down the pack, so in the front of the pack it's kind of spread out at the moment, but Oliver is still looking at the back of Willem Steyn, who's unfortunately been spun around in the earlier stage of the race, but it has provided this man on screen, the number 137, with a bit of an opportunity to fight for a position here to fight for the 5th position. And Renee, I know you do have a very strong skill set for making a good drive back. What do you think is Steyn going to be looking at now, having to defend his position from Oliver, and also trying to still salvage what he can from this race with that incident from earlier?
Well, again, like what we were saying earlier, he's got, actually it looks like he's just come up behind him now. Oliver might be going for the overtake. I think he has done. Yes. Okay, well, now what Steyn has to do right now is just basically try and keep his head, keep calm, try and stick with Olivier, and just basically yeah, keep his head down, and he's got basically a few laps left. So hopefully he can catch him before the end of the race, but get his head down.
That's going to be the crucial bit here to really get the past out of your head and just focus on what's ahead. It might even be that Willifear has a bit more pace in hand than he does, so you can use this as an opportunity to maybe catch up with some of the drivers in front. And even though it's only 3 laps left of the race, I think if someone makes a mistake, you do need to be there to kind of capitalize on that.
Exactly. Now I know with these cars as well, consistency is quite a lot, because they carry your speed is actually mostly made up of your momentum. So the more momentum you carry through the track, and the more consistent you can be, you know, the higher up you'll end up in the end. It's basically my thought process when I'm busy fighting from the back of the pack. So basically just to keep it consistent.
That's definitely going to be very important, yeah, and everything that you're saying there is definitely true from what I've experienced in the past. Behind, we just quickly missed it. I think that might be Donny Stunder making a slight mistake, seeing that he's that far back, as I just swapped over as they swapped places. So I think Stunder might have dropped back there from the mistake. James Leach Jr. regaining the 2nd position, so he's been able to use that pace to fight for it. But again, I do think he might be overdriving the car a bit as he's run wide again. Van Beek utilizing his consistency at this point, and I think that's going to be a crucial thing for the last few laps of the race. So
Exactly.
Andre Hildebrand is just hanging in behind them as well. So if they were to come together, Andre might end up with 2nd.
exactly, and we do see that James Leach Jr. has had a bit of a tendency to get very close to the cars in front of him. So the possibility is definitely there that there might be an incident between either both of the drivers or at least one of them. So there's definitely a very really possible 3rd position, if not a 2nd. Sorry, no, if not a 2nd. Just to quickly check again on my list.
And Sean has totally cleared out. I mean, he's got a 16-second lead at the moment, and this is going to walk in the park for him. It's a perfect exhibition of what it is being consistent.
Yeah, and basically this is all he needs to do now, is just exactly what you said, Dennis, is just keep it consistent, and then you'll walk away with I believe it's 56 points.
So this on screen is
through there between Marius and James.
It was actually quite interesting. So you had Leach going on into the inside of Sunset, and then mid-corner they swapped lines again. So Leach running a bit wide on corner exit, losing time, and Van Beek just being expertly positioned to make use of that opportunity. On the inside again, we've got James Leach. Van Beek trying to regain some momentum out of the corner, and unfortunately has to tuck in behind. So this fight's still going to continue all the way to the end. We've still got probably 2 laps left. It all depends on when Johnson is going to cross the line, although I think the possibility is for 3 laps. So the way it works, it's the 25 minutes of the race, and then once the leader crosses the line after the timer, it's another lap. Van Beek falling behind. Nearly lost the back end there, so that's a bit of a scary moment for him.
And Andres managed to sneak past him.
He's still going to have to work for it though, so Van Beek is sitting right underneath the bumper, looking on the inside. He's maybe snuck out a bit early, but he'll have to finish the maneuver on the brakes, and unfortunately he doesn't have quite the angle to really get the pass done. So they'll continue that fight. Oliver Willefear also getting in on the mix, so that consistency has paid off. He's snuck back into a possible fortunate position as Van Wyk runs.
It's going to be a three-way fight for
the podium. For the final podium, yeah.
Definitely is quite interesting, and you can see there Willefear actually switching between the two different cars, drafting at different angles, trying to bet on which one was going to be faster through that straight. Unfortunately, he's dropped a bit further back.
He's just not careful. Yeah, we've known him in this race so far to have the pace, but he's been a little bit dodgy on some of the corners, but hopefully he can hold it together, because otherwise he's going to be losing out on that second place.
He's probably going to be the man in race 2, because now he's got a bit of momentum from this race. So come race 2, James might be the guy that challenges Sean.
And just as we see on screen, Maris van Wyk unfortunately overcooking the rear end just that tad bit, losing a ton of speed, and that's opened the door completely for Willefear, who's just burst past and moved up into 4th position. So we're on the final lap. Johnson's crossed the line after the time has expired, and we've got 1 lap of racing left for these gentlemen.
Now, I think the reason why Marius is getting so loose is these cars you can either drive with or without traction control. Without traction control is probably about 0.3 faster a lap, but then you've got to contend with those sort of moments.
I definitely agree, and traction control is always an interesting thing, because if you do have the skill set to be faster on it, you're going to do really well. But the problem is, to get that skill set, you need to drive hot laps, but also drive races without traction control. So it's a bit of a catch-22, where you either do the races with traction control and do really well, or you're driving without traction control and it's a bit of a learning curve at the start. So we're rounding out the race as we speak. Still half a lap left for these guys on the screen right now. Well, if you're 1.2 seconds behind Hildebrand, if Hildebrand can keep it consistent, he's going to have that 3rd position in the bag. Johnson is looking very good for a podium. He's already almost a quarter of a lap, probably not a quarter of a lap, but he's miles ahead of everyone, almost 20 seconds. As Willefear closes the gap down between himself and Hildebrand. It's all going to be on the last few corners, whether Hildebrand is able to manage that gap and keep it consistent.
Just at the fastest middle sector of the race.
That's quite interesting. So that might have come through a bit later, as he's crossing the line right about now. So Johnson securing a very solid 1st place. Willefear and Hildebrand through the last corner. Who's it going to be?
He can get a good exit here, Willefear. He might have a good chance, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Hildebrand ran very defensively and kind of parked the car on the apex, and Willefear really had to slow down quite hard due to that. A bit of a gamble, if you ask me, but it's paid off, and they've finished in their respective positions. We've still got a few guys coming across the line. Stain in 6th position.
If I'm not mistaken, it looks like Stander and Corsa are pretty close together at the back.
So have a quick bit of a look. I think so those are interval times instead of gapped times, but Van der Bresta isn't crossing the line, and then Stander bringing running out position 8. And then we've still got Javi Goos running out 9th position, and behind him you can see Wilke Weringa finishing off the rest of the grid. He's going to be in 1st position for the 2nd race with the reverse grid, and he's done really well. He's fairly new to sim racing, so it's been quite interesting off air to see how he's been progressing and how he's been improving on the practice server. So your finishers are Johnson with the first position, Leach Jr. second, Hildebrand third, Willoughby fourth, Van Wyk fifth, Steyn sixth, Van der Westhuizen seventh, Stander eighth, Gous ninth, Vinegar 10th, and we'll be swapping them around for the second race. So I'm going to send you all to a few ad breaks, and then we'll be back for the second race. Welcome back, everyone. So we've got the drivers on grid at the moment. We're just getting or some of them are just sorting out a few of their settings for the car for the race, just making sure their fuel levels are correct and all of that. Right, we've got the lights up on screen at the moment. Race director is going to give the go ahead. 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights, 6. Someone reversing at the back of the grid, not entirely sure who that is, and we're off. So Hilke Verhoeven getting a very good start there while we wait for the cameraman to catch up. He's in the battle there with Harvey Gous. 3 wide into the first corner, almost 4 wide, or still kind of heading up to the corner. Bit of contact between the drivers, 2 drivers getting taken out. We'll see them drop down the pit there, and unfortunately Steyn finding him in a very unfortunate position there. Van der Westhuizen is heading out the back. Behind him, Donnie Stander and Willoughby still duking it out.
This is the break that Rian's been waiting for. Let's see if he can capitalize.
We know that he's in previous races he's been able to capitalize on a good start, so it's going to come down to pace and consistency. Willoughby looking at Stander on the inside, making the pass stick, and now back again comes Stunder. So Stunder with the having the inside line, but then having to cut back and prepare for the next corner. So through the middle of the lap, Van der Vesta and Olivier, Stunder and Hildebrand for top positions at the moment. So everyone starts filing through. One of the drivers losing it, that's going to be Olivier, unfortunately falling out of the top runners, promoting Verenga to 5th position, Johnson to 4th. Hildebrand looking at the back of Stunder there. 3 cars very close together, so it's going to be interesting to see how they progress through the lap.
He did a good job there in keeping his car pointed in the right direction, because he's not that far behind actually.
Yeah, that's another skill altogether, is that recovery once your car goes off track.
I think he had a little bit of help from the wall there, but there's definitely some amount of skill involved there for sure.
Up the inside, Johnson looking for opportunity there. And the side by side, Hildebrand getting the draft from Stunder. I think Johnson might have realized that and tucked back behind. Right, into the first heavy braking zone. They're all in single file. No one really, although Johnson just showing the nose a little bit, making Hildebrand sweat. Hildebrand running very deep, almost making contact with Johnson, who's got the momentum going through the corner. Stunder really holding up Hildebrand to this point. I think he might be very occupied with his mirrors at the moment. Johnson trying to pick which car he wants to back, and then just assumes an outside line. An inside line. Actually getting the pass done on Hildebrand. So Johnson moving into 3rd position, as he's able to keep that momentum going. Stunder is still under pressure there. We're going to jump back, although on the outside, Johnson just looking for that gap, not really finding it. Further back behind, Leach Jr. overtaking Hirga, and a massive send from Johnson on the brakes on the inside. And he's now moved ahead.
Sorry, that was some nice late braking over there from Johnson.
Very confident though, but again, that's with such a heavy braking zone for a corner, if you can get the momentum just right, there's a lot of opportunities to be had. Verenga and Leach Jr. swapping positions to and fro, probably swapped positions a few times now. So while Leach Jr. does seem to have the pace on Verenga does have a bit more consistency in hand. And I think that might be Leach Jr. with a bit of damage heading into the pits. Steyn also making the pass on Verenga. Trying to...
First and second lap times very, very close, but Rian got the fastest first sector. I wonder if Sean will be able to catch that gap now. It's over 3 seconds, but maybe he can catch up to Rian.
It's all going to come down to consistency and then how much we can carry that momentum. Hildebrand on Stunder, not finding the momentum. They're going to go into sunset, and a few of the drivers kind of using a bit of a double apex for this corner. It's only a single apex for Hildebrand as he heads through, crossing over to the other side of the track for the racing line. 4 tenths, he's able to follow 2 tenths, he's able to follow Stunder very close by. It's all going to depend on the hairpin at the end of this piece of track. Who's going to be able to brake more effectively? See Hildebrand setting up a very nice big arc for his turn. not finding a way past Thunder. Thunder running a bit more defensively with a bit more of a restricted curve racing line. And there's a bit of a slower car up ahead that they're catching.
There's something to keep an eye on there, guys. Each junior is doing. I think he's taking a bit of some driving out of my book because always we see Stain. I think that was Stain, or was that Thunder?
Thunder losing it.
But he's looks like he's on a bit of a drive back, each junior.
As he narrowly avoids Willowfield. That could have ruined his drive back. He's driving around Stain there, so he definitely has a lot of pace, but he's had to contend with the damage earlier, and I think that's hurt his race quite a bit.
So there's definitely also a lot of action going on here. Cars going left and right, so he's going to have his hands full keeping his car out of all of that.
I definitely agree, and especially if some of the cars ahead of him might have a bit of damage, it might get a bit tricky.
Just to inform you guys, Sean is catching as well. He's now got the gap down to 2.5 seconds and just set the fastest first sector.
Hopefully we'll have something to look at there in a little bit. So those, I think it was Sean and Rion that were actually having pretty close times in the first race. So hopefully this will end up being something quite interesting come near the end.
Yes, and batting for honours of the second race.
Yeah.
So while we have a bit of a quiet moment, I'm just going to go through the YouTube comments. Dennis, I think that's you saying hi to Peter and Melvin. Peter Krobler saying hi to everyone. I'm not sure whether they're participating in the Div 1 race, but
yes, they are.
It's going to be really interesting seeing those guys duking it out with you, Dennis.
It's going to be great. The top 16 in Division 1 covered by a second.
Then we've got Michael Rust also clocking in and saying hi. Gary Johnson saying good luck to Sean Johnson. James Crook also saying good luck. Then Peter Krobler, that's a bit of a compliment to you, Mornay. Just saying, awesome intro video. Wow.
Thank you.
Gary Johnson saying hi.
Brian's lost it. Brian's just spun.
Thank you for that update. Yeah, so Sean Johnson really capitalizing. Ran van Westen, unfortunately, not able to keep that consistency going until the end of the race. So he's dropped back to third.
Cracked under the pressure that Sean was putting on him.
And that's
Sean's got a big smile on his face now.
That puts Andre up into second and James up into third, I believe.
That's definitely going to... No, James still has a bit of fighting left to do. He's got 7 seconds until he reaches Van der Westhuizen. So it's all going to depend on what Van der Westhuizen's car looks like at the moment. Looking at Van der Westhuizen, no visible damage. I'm not exactly sure whether these cars show it that easily. But that's going to be a bit of a frustrating moment for him, so he's going to be recovering from that one. Although he is making up the gap to Hildebrand as well. We'll be keeping an eye on what's happening there. Then I see James Crook kind of looking here for tips. So James, if you're looking for tips, make sure you keep that consistency going. That's going to be very, very key for this race. You can do as many fast laps as you want. If you can't chain them together, it's not really going to help you that much. Then Rudy van Westhuizen also clocking and saying hi. Matt Williams also saying hi. And someone I haven't really seen, Ryan Neville, also congratulating Sean on his driving. Right, 9 minutes left.
Sean is actually, Johnson's actually pulling the gap in the last lap. He got a last lap or two. He's pulled another 2 seconds on Hildebrand. So it looks like he's running away with it in the front.
Improving his time at the moment as well, so doing very well for himself. Then Willem Steyn is also coming under pressure from Sean Willefeer. Well, he was coming under pressure. Willefeer, unfortunately, having to save his car there. He's going to have to drop back a few tenths. But a very nice recovery from him there in the background. Continuing the rest of the race. So Van der Westhuizen is actually bringing down the gap between himself and Hildebrand, so we might have a bit of a battle for second place near the end of this race. Steyn doing the best that he can to improve on his times, just to keep Willefeer at bay. And it is looking good so far. He's 5-6 tenths up on his best time, which is a really good thing considering he's got someone chasing him down from behind. He just needs to be careful that he's not overdriving that car. But if you're looking at the inside, he had the closing speed, but he made the right call there, not really going for the dangerous maneuver, but just tucking in behind and getting Steyn sweating that bit more.
James Leach has just set the fastest lap as well, a blistering 203.2.
Wow.
That's really, really good. Considering these guys are lapping 207 and 206.
Sean, Andre and Rian are doing 205s at the moment.
Well, we did say earlier, like Leach Jr. is pretty quick on this track. It's just that he's got to keep the consistency going. If he can keep the consistency, then I mean it's only what I think 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds between him and second place. But let's hope for some battles before the end of the race.
So speaking of battles, Willefeer moving up on Steyn. Then swapping around again as they go through Sunset. Steyn running very wide. Now 6 tenths behind Willefeer. So these drivers quite close. And it's that first sector of track that's catching them off guard a little bit.
Yeah, what Steyn's got to do now is what he did in the first race is just try and stick as close as he can behind Willefeer and you know, wait for the mistake, just pressure him and wait for that mistake, and then that position will be his.
Definitely agree. So Willefeer now opening up the gap 1.8 seconds and counting. We do have a bit of a swap. James Leach moving ahead of Rian van der Westhuizen. Last I checked, he was 2 seconds behind, so I think Van der Westhuizen might have run really deep through a corner or had a little bit of a mistake. Now Leach moving into third position. 5 minutes left to go. And still a lot to fight for in this race. Willefeer with a 2:04.6, his best lap of the race. Stunner with a 2:07. So as the fuel loads are dropping, the times are tumbling. Leach opens the gap with Van der Westhuizen. Now charging ahead. Up in front. Sean Johnson looking really good for a win. He just needs to keep that consistency up, make sure he doesn't make any mistakes. And then he stays ahead. So Brunge, I just wanted to kind of give a bit of a shout out. So doing really well in the second race as well, sitting in a very comfortable 8th position. And if you can keep the consistency going, that's going to be a nice position. So he's been fighting with Goos in the previous race.
And Hilke is also, I mean, as Dennis mentioned earlier, it's his first online race event. So from the start of actually from 3 or 4 days ago when he started practicing, he was doing 220s, 230s, so he's progressed by miles in the last few days to get where he is now, and he's doing really well in 8th place at the moment.
I definitely agree. It's also quite a good thing for him at the moment that he's in open air and he doesn't really have anyone distracting him. I think we can all relate that at the start when you're racing, the moment you see cars around you, you start becoming a bit shaky and it does detract from your concentration. But once you get into that rhythm, once the pack starts opening up a bit, it's a lot easier to get on with your race and get those good laps in. And I think that's exactly what Veronica has been doing here. And he's not too far back from Stander, so I think he can be pretty darn happy with the second race.
As we see also now as we're talking, Leach Jr. is actually closing down that gap between him and Hildebrand pretty quickly. I believe it was 2 or 3 seconds a moment ago. He's brought it down to 1.6, so he's definitely on a charge over here.
Yeah, he's had a bit of a slow lap at the moment, but he's still closing down that gap, so he does have a bit of pace in hand. I think he might have learned from his earlier mistakes and decided to rather drive within his limits a little bit, but that's still enough to catch Hildebrand through that middle sector of the track. 1.5 minutes left, and then a lap after that. It's all going to depend on when Johnson crosses that start-finish line. So I think it's probably 3 laps. Well, I say 3 laps, 2.5 laps of racing left for these drivers. Sitting at
what Leach Jr. Sorry, Johan. What Leach Jr. needs to do, I've seen it happen in the previous race as well. He is quick, but again, you know, the consistency is what you need in these cars and keeping momentum. If you can just try and relax, because this position is for second place, so those points, like I said earlier, are very valuable, especially as that they count towards the overall champion between Division 1 and Division 2. So let's hope he can just keep it together and then catch up with Hildebrand.
Also, something that I just noticed as they crossed the line, I was at 204 for James Leach and a 207 for Hildebrand. So this fight is probably going to get going right about, I'd say in 4 corners time.
Yeah. I know Leach has been having trouble with the S's, so let's see how that goes for him.
Going to be interesting indeed. The other thing that's confusing me while I'm commentating this, I ran this track in one of the 80s versions of it, and the direction of travel has basically been swapped. So they're running the track in reverse from what I'm used to running it on.
Yeah, it's at the moment they changed it. I'm not sure which year it was, but yeah, it's now anti-clockwise, and I believe yes, it used to be anti-clockwise with a few corner changes as well.
But yeah, Leach has caught up with Hildebrandt. The battle is on. He's within drafting distance. And Johnson is going to cross the line, triggering the countdown for the last lap. Leach already showing the nose, running a little bit deep there.
Looks like he's got the run.
And he's within that drafting distance. He is looking at pulling alongside. He is alongside. It's going to be through the kink. And that looks... Although
So
it's not...
be better on brakes.
It's definitely not done and dusted. Still alongside. Hildebrandt definitely not letting go and fighting back for that second position. He knows it's
some very good racing.
Some very good racing indeed. And he knows it's the last lap, so he's going to be fighting tooth and nail for this. James Leach slightly running off track. Hildebrandt maintaining that position, and as you said, it's going to now be the S's and that big hairpin at the end of it, and this is all going to depend on whether Leach is able to follow.
And something that's always also difficult is when following closely behind another driver. I know from experiences, it's very difficult to just stick to your own lines, especially, or as we see him going for a move here. Nope, he's staying back. Is staying with your own line. Usually it's very easy to actually follow the car in front of you, which proves to be the slower line, but obviously Leach making the move around down the mine shaft. It looks like they are still very close together, but we'll see what happens down through Crocodile.
Hildebrandt positioning himself on the inside, heavy on the brakes, but not enough.
One more corner to go.
Leach just parking it at the entry of the corner. Hildebrandt unfortunately not able to get the momentum going. Leach almost losing it with a bit of oversteer, but securing second position. So well fought for both of those drivers. So Sean Johnson, James Leach Jr., Andre Hildebrandt. Van Westhuizen crossing the line for fourth. Willefear coming home in fifth. Willemstein, bit of a race on his own, but a very comfortable sixth position. Donny Stander in seventh. Car looking a bit worse for wear at the front, and might be they got caught up at the start of the race. And then a gentleman that's going to be very happy with his results, number 60, is going to be Hilke Weringa, showing that steady wins the race.
Well done.
Very well done indeed. It's a good consistency, especially improvement as he's been able to fight against Harvey Goos, who was ahead of him in the previous race. So Harvey coming home in 9th position, and then Marius van Wyk riding out 10th position. So nearly there.
Well, if these two races are anything to go by, I'm super looking forward to the Div 1 race.
I definitely agree, and we're going to be swapping over to them very soon. Monet, I think you probably also need to jump in there at some point.
I probably need to get going, but there is 5 minutes until the qualifying starts for the Div 1 race, so stick around, guys. But thanks, Johan, for having me. It's been a pleasure, and well done to the drivers, and I will speak to you guys soon. Johan, I'll leave it over to you.
Thank you, Monet, and good luck for your race as
Thank
well.
you.
It's going to be very fun watching you guys go around. Well, Monet heads off to the track to get on with the practicing. Just going to see if some of the drivers are around and whether I can actually pull them in. Unfortunately not. So I can't really see I can't really see any of the winning drivers on the voice channels at the moment. So I'm going to put you guys on a little bit of an ad break and then just swap my system over to the server for Division 1, and we'll be preparing to get going on that. I'm just quickly looking. Gary Johnson also congratulating Sean Johnson. And then for the next race, I see Craig Wesley saying that they need to add some ballast for some of the drivers that've been turning insane times. So that's going to be Dennis Mitchell and Donnie Stander. Oh, sorry, Donnie van der Rooyen. Peter Krobler also saying that they need to have some weight added to them. So it's going to be interesting to see them get going. I'll swap you over to ads and then I'll just get us ready for Division 1. Welcome back everyone. So we've got Div 1 for the Sim Experience South Africa Mazda MX5 Cup. And the guys have been really keen on practicing laps. Unfortunately, I've been so keen that I've been stuck in a bit of a waiting period for them to get back into the pits for qualifying. But we are getting going. So I'm going to take you through a bit of a flying lap while these guys are on their out lap, and we'll just have a bit of a look and see what it's like going around here. So heading down the main straight, it's very important that you keep your foot flat through the kink, not really a bit of an issue, and then braking for the first corner. So this is going to be a heavy braking, but you still need to keep that momentum going. Be very careful that you don't step onto that curb too much, otherwise you're going to spin out. So very difficult through here. Now you need to keep your foot down. We've seen some people overtaking one another here in Div 2, so it's definitely a possibility if you've got the momentum going into it. Now through Sunset, this is a very tricky corner, and you've seen a lot of drivers swapping places through it, so definitely need to keep that clean through there as well. Again, keeping away from the curbs is going to be very important during your laps. Otherwise, you will step out the rear. So it's going to be very important to keep that as focused as possible. So again, nice big hairpin near the end of your lap. This is a key overtaking opportunity for the drivers. As you get headed into, or as you are headed into the last few corners of the lap. We saw some big overtakes on that hairpin, so a very key location. And then last few corners, some nice 90 or slightly sharper degree corners. The last few turns before the end of the race. Trying to stay as flat as possible through there. 90-degree turn onto the main straight. It's very important that you keep your momentum, that you don't step out the rear, and you get as good of an exit as possible. So that's a 202.619 from Dennis Mitchell. And we'll see if these guys are able to manage something like that as well. So some of the drivers still busy with their flying laps. Well, all of them at the moment. It's going to take about 4 minutes to just get your out lap done and then your first flying lap. So we're still waiting for the times to get onto the board as the drivers near the last few turns on their flying lap. So we're on board with Richard van Heerden at the moment. We'll see where he ends up with this lap. A very wide exit on the turn. Hopefully that's not an off track for him. And I'm not exactly sure why that's not registering on the timing screen, but that was a 203.312 for Richard van Heerden. Melvin Goes doing a 203.274. And a few other of the other drivers also putting in time. So we'll probably see them pop up on the screen in a little bit. Here, almost losing the rear there on the outside of the track. First sector 39.666, 1/10 down on his lap. Unfortunately, losing it all through Sunset. It's a really tricky corner to get right. Unfortunately, that's going to cost him a bit of time. He's found it again. Almost 2/10. And we'll see where he ends up at the end of this lap. I also see Peter Galna is on screen getting a best lap of a 202.723. Dylan Fasagi at 202.767. So hopefully they'll be able to repeat that, so we get that on screen. And we follow James on here, and 3/10, 4/10, 5/10. Was able to find through the corner. He's settled onto the 3/10. So definitely found a little bit of time. It's going to count in his favor. And if he's able to get this exit done properly, he might even dip into the 202s with this time. With sliding there on the exit, that's going to cost him a lot of time, and that's going to be a 202.723. Sorry, I'm not exactly sure why that. So yeah, that Peter Galna is with the 202.723. Van Heerden with a 203.200. So some very solid times. Peter Galna is still working on his time. Dylan Fasagi finding 8/10. Almost 9. That's going to be a 201.897, securing first position for the start of the first race. Again, for Div 1, it's going to be the same thing. 2 races, one the right way around, with qualifying deciding the grid order, and then the second race, a reverse grid of the first. Dennis Mitchell on track He's put in a 202.776. So that's going to be a nice, comfortable third position. James Crook, unfortunately, not finding time on that lap. Ian Upton still busy with his. Donny van Rooyen, 7/10 down. It's going to be potentially a very good lap. And he's going to head into the 202s quite comfortably if he can keep up the pace. Only question is, where is he going to end up? So 6/10 down. Last 3 corners of the track. Running very deep through that corner. But finding the time, that's 7/10. All comes down to this last corner. How good of an exit he's going to get out of there. So he's dipped into the region of 9/10, but following the exit of the corner, that's going to be 8/10 or 7.5 down. And that's popped him up all the way to second position. So Donny van Rooyen with a 202.327. Melvin Goos, 202.671. Looking very comfortable indeed. Looking around, when I deploy, kind of on the cusp of improving, but not really. Armonivote, unfortunately not finding the time and having to go again. Dean van Wyk, 1.1 seconds, 1.2 almost, with only a few corners left. So we'll keep with him at the moment. Through the hairpin he goes. Gets a really clean exit out of that one. Through the kink. Not really much of an issue steering through that. You can see him keeping his foot down. Slightly early on the throttle through that corner. He was kind of hesitant and just pumping it a little bit, but that's 1.5 seconds he's down on his previous time. We'll see where that pops him up to. Now the last corner, this is going to be the crucial one. I'm just running through there while the car is idling. 1.5 seconds. Where's this going to place this man? Up into 16th position, pushing down Michael Rust as qualifying end. So we still have all the drivers up on the track. I'm going to have a bit of a look at Timo Smit. He's still at the start of his lap, so he has a bit of improving to do, but he's already found the 10th. We'll look at some of the other guys while they're coming in. Pieter Geldenhuys, 4/10, almost 4/10 down on his time. Malvago is being pushed down or gone up to, I'm not exactly sure where they popped, but there's been some movements in the pack with regards to Melvin Goos. There's Mitchell sitting in 4th. Pieter Geldenhuys now with a possible opportunity to jump around. Peter Grobler jumping all the way to position 6 with a 202.718. It's always these two Pieters together. So it's Pieter Geldenhuys and Peter Grobler. Let's see what Pieter Geldenhuys is able to do. So he's 4/10 down at the moment. He's found a bit more time. He's had a better exit in the past, but he's going to pop all the way into second position. So he's going to be very happy with that. Melvin Goos. Oh, there's Mitchell dipping into the 201s, as we saw him in the background in the previous picture. Melvin Goos, unfortunately, not finding the time. Timo Smit with the seventh position when we last checked with him. I'm not exactly sure where he was. Sean Webber, 3/10 down. I think Ian Upton might be sweating at the moment. So maybe not really getting the exit that he needed, and he's going to remain in 10th position. Dean van Wyk, 3/10 down, still improving, but that's not going to move him around too much. And Sean Webber stopping out on the track. So your grid for the race: Versaghi, first position, Mitchell, then Geldenhuys, Van Rooyen, Goos, Grobler, Smit, Crook, Upton, Sean Webber, Van Heerden, Moss, Deploy, then Van Rijn, Wesley, Mack, Van Wyk, Rust, and Nieuwoud rounding out the grid in 19th position. I'm going to send you back to the realm of ads, and we'll be back with you as soon as the drivers have started grading up. Welcome back, everyone. So the drivers are busy gridding up for the race. That's going to be an interesting race. I just need to point out there's been some massive support for the SRAC drivers in the YouTube chat. So good luck to all of you. It's going to be interesting as we prepare for the first race. Still waiting on the race director to just get the lights on, and I'm going to need these guys to drive as quick as possible. I still have curfew to contend with, so hopefully these guys are as quick as their time suggests they are. The lights are up on the screen. Director has decided it's a quick countdown, 6 lights, and we are off. So a superb start from all of them, back getting away very nicely indeed. Still waiting on our cameraman. Through the first kink, back nicely spread out, so it's all going to depend on what's going to happen. So almost 3 wides going into the first corner. Some light contact between the drivers, all of them still staying on track, and it's going to be Dylan Versagi, then Dennis Mitchell and Melvin Goes behind him. All of them making it through the first corner very cleanly indeed. I see some shuffling around the back, but no drivers really dropping back aggressively. As Mitchell hunts down Pasaki here through Sunset. Swap there between Sean Weber and Pieter Geldenhuys as we go through here. One of the drivers running very wide of the track. I think that might have been Timo Smit. All the drivers still within a second of one another, and that's the beauty of these cars. It's nice, close racing. A bit of a wheel there from Dylan Bazaki, and that's going to be him off the track. As everyone rushes past, that's probably 7 lost positions. And he's going to be kicking himself. Dennis Mitchell leading the race. Melvin Goos in second, close behind Pieter Grobler, looking on the inside but not finding anything. Down the main straight we go. We're on board with Melvin Goos. He's going to be trying to hunt down Mitchell, but he's got Pieter Grobler to contend with behind him. As we gear up for the last few corners before we get onto the main straight for this track. Van Rijn falling behind Dylan Versaki, who's probably on a bit of a drive back. Some hard braking. Pieter Grobler, even harder on the brakes, almost running into the back of Melvin Goos, but doing very well to avoid him. Van Rijn also hunting down Pieter Grobler, having to defend from Sean Weber on his side. You can see the cars slightly grouping up. Van Rijn finding the switch for his lights. Might be in a bit of a panicked button press as he's communicating with his race engineer, trying to figure out where has he been losing time to his opponent. Weber very closely behind him. As the cars are still all within nice close range of one another. It's been some really close driving here. I'm going to jump slightly behind Tommy Leary Moss, if I can get it to him. He's trying to look to make the move on James Crook. Timo Smit also firmly in the mix, nearly running off the track but keeping up. Unfortunately, some connectivity issues for one of the drivers. Vasaki falling back, making a bit of a mistake, I would assume. And a whole lot of switching happening here. A lot of action here. So Michael Rust in the thick of things. Unfortunately gets shunted off track and somehow recovers. I don't know how the hell he's done that, but that's a very nice recovery from him indeed. In front of him, Ian Upton, Stuart Mack and Dean van Wyk all having a nice right battle. But Ryan getting ahead of Sean Weber in 5th place. I'm just going to... So one of the drivers, that's going to be Van Heeren, unfortunately losing a bit of control and running wide. And 202s from the front 3 runners in the race. That's some really fast times. I'm going to jump to the front again. Some action between Grobler and Van Rooyen. Some very close action indeed. Sorry, Van Rooyen and Weber, it would seem. Apologies, yeah. Van Rooyen and Weber. Weber trying to show his nose on the inside, not finding the gap, and he's going to try and get the bit exit, and he does. Unfortunately, that is very wide for Van Rooyen. As we see Sean Weber charging up ahead. Tommy Leary Moss smelling blood. Bruce Sunset is going to see if he can get a bit of an exit on the inside. Unfortunately, not enough. He's now positioned on the outside of Van Rooyen. Doesn't have the momentum to make the drive. Gets so close to making contact. And let's see if we can see what it looks like battling in the pack. So we're on board with Timo Smit, and we know him quite well from the Australian V8 series. But now it's going to be interesting to see how these drivers do. Nice little move there on Tommy Leary Moss. Tommy not really giving up, trying to pull it alongside him again. With the inside line, so the team is really going to have to try and pull the momentum. Tom Leary, unfortunately, exceeding the limits of his size grip and losing the rear end of the car. You do need to respect the amount of speed that you can carry through these corners, as it might be a bit too much for them. What I deploy in the thick of things, trying to make a pass here on Peter KYALAMI and getting it to work. Unfortunately, KYALAMI is making a bit of a mistake, and Monet has capitalized off that quite nicely. Back to the front of the pack. It's a three-way battle. It's Dennis Mitchell, it's Melvin Goos and Peter Probler, all within a second of one another. So you do need to make sure that you don't make any mistakes. Otherwise you might fall behind. Tommy Leary Moss in a bit of a battle with James Crook. As you see him overtake, well, just close. Sorry, no overtaking, but James Crook right on the behind of Tommy Leary Moss. Tommy running defensive on the inside gate is going to force James Crook to drive as well as he can, trying to maintain the momentum. And I think that might have granted the inside line for James Crook as he overtakes Tommy Leary Moss and gets going. Sean Webber dropping behind. There you can see him rejoining the track. And that's just how easy it is to make a mistake if you overdrive these cars. Tommy Leary Moss and Crook still at it. Tommy Leary Moss not happy to give up that position, so he's going to fight tooth and nail for it. Crook with the inside line, and he's been restricted quite a bit, although he's been granted a bit of track space on the outside, and that's allowed him to carry the momentum through, get the better exit. And Moss is going to have to battle him again, heading to the main straight of the track. Last few corners, Moss showing some nose on the car again, assuming an inside line for the next corner, and then he's going to be on the outside for the turn onto the main straight. And he's decided to tuck back behind, get the better exit, and see if he can get a drive on James Crook from there. Nice, neat exit from both drivers. Moss firmly in the draft. Sorry, I've been catching the wrong drivers. So Crook making a good pass on Moss. Might have lost my train of thoughts a little bit, but these drivers are still doing quite well. Stuart Mack in a very tricky battle with Ian Upton. Unfortunately, that inside line is not going to do anything for you. And he's had to brake quite aggressively to ensure that he doesn't run into Upton with that attempted overtake. Crook getting the overtake done on Moss as they swap positions again. Very close together, still side by side. Crook with the inside line, so that Moss is going to have to tuck in behind. Sean Webber getting an extremely good exit and almost passing both drivers, and in the chaos Moss gets back in front of Crook. They do need to be mindful of their battle. They do have a bit of space around them. Sean Webber looking to run around the outside of Crook. Crook having to run a very restricted line. He's lost a lot of momentum as he's alongside with Sean Webber going through the kink. Crook has the inside line for the next corner. I think he's going to make use of it. He's restricting himself a lot through the corner, but he's able to pocket on the apex, and unfortunately that's going to keep him a little bit behind. I'm not exactly sure how Webber snuck past, but it's now Moss, Webber and Crook. So it seems like Sean Webber has pulled a bit of a sneaky on us and gotten past while the camera swapped over. is quite difficult to define or see which driver is driving which car. But Crook has had to defend quite aggressively against these drivers. I think that's put him off pace a little bit and caught him off guard. Almagos, the only guy close enough to really challenge Dennis Mitchell. So we've done 5.5 laps. 8 minutes 40 seconds left of this race, and then another lap on top of that. I think the front runners separating themselves quite a bit. Timo Smith charging up the pack, fighting with Donny van Rooyen, as he's 6 tenths behind. And looking for opportunity here, so into the hairpin. And it's all going to depend on whether he's able to get a drive out of it. Van Rooyen does seem to have the cleaner exit as they steam on ahead. Not too much to write home about between these drivers at the moment. The rest of the pack also spreading out right about now. Although Peter Gelnhuys and Richard van Heerden are looking at a bit of opportunity here. Unfortunately, that's going to be Gelnhuys running wide and off the track. Donny van Rooyen with the fastest lap of 2:02.231. Doing very well for himself. Back to Almagos, the gap is opening up. Mitchell is slightly pulling ahead. And of course, as I said, he's going, Ghost is going to start closing down the gap again. These drivers keep fighting with a lot at stake here. And still a few laps left to kind of get the magic done. Rest of the pack, again, still barely spread out. Unless someone makes a mistake, no one's really closing in or a pass at the moment. That being said, we do have Mornay deploy very close to Van Rooyen. So you can see him there drafting behind the grey car through sunset. And unfortunately that's been some connectivity issues, and that's definitely no fault of Mornay at that point. In Upton on a bit of a battle on his own, not really finding anyone around him, but if he can keep a hold of this position, he's going to be looking a little better for the next race. Fastest lap, Melvin Goes, as he steams ahead with a, I think that was a 2:01. Really trying to catch up with Dennis Mitchell. That gap staying around the 1 second mark. It's all going to depend on who cracks first. Vasagi moving up in the pack after his unfortunate accident in the first lap. You see Mac dropping back, so that's meant that he's probably had a bit of an off. Jumping back, Tommy Leary Moss firmly securing 6th position. So he's really secured that fight there at the end. James Crook still slightly behind, but I think at this point he might be thinking about preserving his race and really seeing if he can keep a hold of that position. Right, a little bit of a battle here. Dean van Wyk and Richard van Heerden behind him, but then also Michael Rust in the mix as well. So Michael's being hunted down by Van Wyk, and then Van Heerden is hunting down Van Wyk, and Gelderland is very close to Van Heerden as well. So you can see them almost pulling alongside for the hairpin. Gelderland is trying to drive around to the outside, not having the momentum, and completely has to brake, and that's put him under pressure from Stuart Mack, who's now 2/10 behind him. Trying to show the nose, trying to find the gap. And this time it's Mack's duty to brake a bit earlier. Back in front, Dean van Wyk, very close to Michael Rust. 3/10 onto the main straight, and a nice send up the inside. Is he going to have the momentum going through the straight? You can see Michael Rust running a very wide indeed. So that's going to be Rust, Van Wyk and Van Heerden continuing with their positions as is. Close 6/10 at the moment, so that's for the lead of the race. I'm just going to keep an eye on that, as we also keep an eye on these gentlemen right here. So Michael under heavy pressure from Van Wyk. Big slide there from Van Heerden as he falls down the pack a bit. Van Gelderland and Mack capitalizing on that quite royally. I can think that they're very happy indeed. Van Wyk still under pressure from Gelderland, 3/10 down. And they'll continue to find as the back of the pack starts to pull together again. I'm just quickly going to go to Melvin, and I just want to see what he's up to here. So, of course, that's commentator's curse. So he sticks it around the 5/10, 6/10 mark until I jump to him, and then he'll fall behind a little bit. We'll keep an eye on what he gets done through this last corner. He has to correct mid-corner, and that's cost him a bunch of time. So back to the back of the pack we go to have a bit of a look at what Peter Gelderland is doing with Dean van Wyk. Gelderland is making the pass, but he hasn't finished the job quite yet. Van Wyk on the inside, he's going to pull ahead again. Gelderland is making the old switcheroo work. Pulls ahead of Van Wyk again. So they prepare for the main straight. Behind there you can see Van Rijn getting the pass done on Stuart Mack. So all of the guys filter through the last turn. Dylan Versaghi on James Crook here, also looking for a passing opportunity. 4/10 down, he is within some striking distance, and he has a little bit of time to prepare before they get into sunset. 2/10, 2.5 We'll see what gets done there. A lot of congratulations for Peter Gelderland for his overtake there on the YouTube channel. Versaghi very close. He's definitely running on a positive delta, so he's found the pace. Hopefully that's enough pace to actually get the overtake done. Massive drift, and that's unfortunately hurt his time, but provided us with a little bit of entertainment to go into the hairpin. And 7/10, 6/10 down. He's going to need a massive drive. He wants to pull it alongside for the main straight. Back at the back of the pack, Stuart Mack, very close to Craig Wesley. And they were closer together, so I think Mack might have gone for an overtake and unfortunately fallen behind having to brake to avoid contact. But he's chipping away at that gap between himself and Craig Wesley again. Craig Wesley feeling the pressure, but trying to fight for it. Up ahead, Peter Kalden is drafting behind Michael Rust. And we'll see what he's able to do at the end of the straight. So not gaining too much from that toe. And he's too far back to make any type of attempt through the braking zone. But he's following closely behind, and it seems like Michael's car is bogged down a little bit. Unfortunately, that's not what you want to do, as he goes off track and spins around. At the front of the pack, Malmberg's still very close to Dennis Mitchell. And Krobler sitting in a third position. We're on the final lap, so we'll stay with the leaders for now, as we've got 3 corners left. Coast knowing that this is the last opportunity he has to do anything. Has got a bit of a 6-second buffer, so if he runs a bit wide, he'll still be fine. So he can kind of afford to really go for it here. Unfortunately, running a bit deep. Mitchell trying to break the toe, and that's going to be a solid victory for Dennis Mitchell. Well-deserved second place for Melvin Goos. Peter Grobler, very solid third. Daniel van Rooyen fourth. Timo Smit fifth. Tommy Leary Moss with sixth position that he really had to fight for. Dylan Versace trying to overtake James Crook as they pull alongside for the end of the straight. That's going to be very close. That's going to be 1/100th that Crook beats Versace by, but unfortunately close, but no cigar. Then I'm just going to jump ahead. Craig Wesley trying to see if he can get ahead of Van Rooyen, but not finding an opportunity for it. Mornay Deploy also hunting Magda, not finding the time, but a good race for all of them. Richard van Heerden rounding out the back as Nieuwoud finishes in front of him. So your finishers are Mitchell, Dennis Mitchell, Melvin Goos, Peter Grobler. Then you've got Smith, Moss, Webber, Upton, Crook, Versace, Rust, Van Wyk, Van Rooyen, Wesley, Mack, Deploy, Geldenhuis, Nieuwoud, and Van Heerden rounding out the back. So a few very close finishes. So it's going to be really exciting to see the second race start. We're going to swap the grid around, but we still have some very close battles indeed. So it's going to be interesting seeing them head into the first 3-4 corners of the track and see how the pack settles in between. I'm just going to go to an ad break, and we'll be back with you shortly as we transition to the second race. Welcome back everyone. So we've got everyone on the grid ready to get going. And the race director will probably get us started quite soon. The drivers are revving up the engines, preparing for the second race. So we had Dennis Mitchell winning the previous race, and a big congratulations to him. But unfortunately he's going to have to fight from the back of the pack for this one. So the lights are ready. The race director is just making us wait. 3 lights, 4 lights, 5, 6, and we are off. So massive start there. I think that might have been, I'm not exactly sure who that is. I'm still waiting for my timing screen to catch up. One of the drivers getting away quite nicely. So Richard from Heerden heading out the front of the pack. Mornay Deploy in second position, and Peter Galnijs behind him. So Mornay Deploy unfortunately dropping back. Some slides from the drivers further down the pack, and Peter Galnijs and Mornay Deploy swapping to and fro as they fight for position in these first few corners of the race. Deploy following very closely to Galnijs through sunset. So let's see what they can get done here. Mornay trying to follow as close as possible, but unfortunately he's had to brake a bit, and that's now putting him under pressure from Van Rijn just behind him. Van Rijn also fighting through the pack. As Deploy looks for an opportunity here on the inside of the hairpin. He's not going to find the speed that he's been looking for. I do think a man that's found the speed is Van Rijn behind him. So Mornay now having to run defensively for the rest of the lap as Van Rijn closes in on him. Van Rijn looking on the outside. Mornay Deploy running a very restricted line, and that's going to open up the line for Van Rijn as they are side by side in the second last corner. Van Rijn pulling ahead, and Mornay now has to see if he can get a very solid exit for the main straight. So both drivers getting very close to contact. Now running or trying to run alongside Van Rijn, covering off the position. Deployed going even closer to the inside, hoping for a bit of an overtake under braking. Is he able to run later on the brakes? No, he's not, and Van Rijn closes off the line and secures third position. Further back, a little battle between Craig Wesley and Camilleri Moss. And then Craig Wesley also closing in on Donnie van Rooyen, but I think that gap is probably going to open up as Van Rooyen is probably fighting through the pack. Back to Mornay Deploy, still fighting with Van Rijn. Now coming under pressure from Dean van Wyk as the 3 drivers run nice and close together. Up in front we've got Van Heerden and then Galnijs fighting for the lead of the second round. Through the hairpin we go, and Mornay is not able to find that time. But still a lot of drivers very close together. Mornay running right under the bumper of Van Rijn. Ryan pushes him out to the outside, gives him the space, but restricts him from gaining any momentum whatsoever. So he's still not letting off, trying to follow as close as he can. It's all going to come down to what can they do on this main straight. Out in front Van Heeren, still pulling ahead of Galdehuys. As Mornay goes way on the inside, lining himself up for the kink as he tries to carry the momentum. They're running side by side as Mornay de Pleu pulls ahead, secures the corner for himself. He now needs to get a big exit. Van Rijn trying to pull alongside. 2 tenths between them. But Mornay able to hold on to the position. Now running very deep. That's opened up the door for Van Rijn. As they go through Sunset. Mornay on the inside line, but he's given himself a very restricted line. He's going to have to hope that he's able to carry that momentum. Van Rijn almost pulling alongside him. Now with the inside line as he pulls ahead of Mornay. So they go to and fro, third and fourth position. The pack is also heaping up behind them, so it's Van Rijn, De Pleu, Van Wyk, Van Rooyen, Goos, all within striking distance of one another. Mornay now under pressure from Dean Van Wyk as Dean passes him. Mornay De Pleu looking at the inside of the corner, and unfortunately has to avoid a spinning Van Rijn. That's cost one of the other drivers a few positions as well. Van Rooyen pulling ahead of De Pleu into fourth position. Mornay now under pressure from Wesley. In the background you can also see a nice little battle developing there between Moss and Webber, and then behind him he's got Mitchell, one of the faster drivers. Up in front, Dean Van Wyk. Contact with Van Rooyen. It's going to be De Pleu pulling ahead back into third position. So at the moment, it's been his consistency that's helped him, and also the avoidance of the other drivers on the track. Behind him, a little battle developing as well, although I think that might be, Melvin Goos and Dennis Mitchell. Mitchell pulling alongside and ahead of Goos, and we'll see if he's able to maintain that position. Now it's going to be Goos and Smit together as well. Back behind, Moss making the pass on Sean Webber. Bit of a contact. Webber getting pushed outside. Moss assuming the position as the action goes down the pack. Moss leading a whole bunch of drivers. Webber looking for a good position, having to think about both attacking and defending at the same time. If you get held up here, you're going to get passed. Up the inside goes Van Rooyen and makes a massive pass, getting 2 positions in one go. Now the driver's spinning out behind. That's going to be Ian Upton. Unfortunately losing positions as drivers charge on ahead. Back to the front. Peter Galdehuys and Van Rooyen, Van Heeren running very close together. So Galdehuys getting the pass done, so that's been after the hairpin, but they're still very close. Van Heeren showing his nose, showing his intentions, and unfortunately running very wide, so that's going to be a heap of time in Galdehuys' back pocket that he will be able to use. Van Heeren trying to charge him down. It's going to be all about the exit of this last corner, and unfortunately that's not the exit that Van Heeren's been looking for. So Peter Galdehuys assuming a very comfortable first position as they head down the straight, and in the background a whole bunch of chaos is following behind them. So this is Melvin Goos, followed by Dennis Mitchell, Timo Smit, Tom O'Leary Moss, Sean Webber, and Van Rooyen and Van der Rijn, and then Michael Rust. So a whole bunch of cars together in very close proximity. hosting everything that he can to defend here from Dennis Mitchell. Mitchell trying to charge through the pack and also trying to keep Timo behind him at bay. But Ghost doing a good job to keep a hold of his position at the moment. You can see there Timo Smith just poking his nose out, trying to pressure Mitchell, but not finding the opportunity to do so. They might even catch up with Wesley if they... Or, sorry, yeah, they might even catch up with Wesley if they keep going at this pace. Goes almost 5 tenths now, 4 tenths down on his delta, losing a bit of time. So Mitchell in his rearview mirror is being a bit of a bother. Mitchell tries to pull alongside into the braking zone, doesn't have the space to do it, but sorry, he's given the space by Ghost, and I think that space is more than enough for him to pull alongside as they head into the last part of the circuit. So side by side, I do think Ghost might have the inside line here. And we'll see whether Mitchell is able to drive around with momentum. So that's going to be Mitchell pulling ahead of Ghost, but Timo Smith also very close to them as well. They need to be careful that they don't hold one another up here on the exit. Smith getting too much momentum through the corner and running very wide. That might be intentional to get a bit of a better exit, seeing that he's following so closely behind. Behind them you can see a big battle between Moss and Van Rooyen as well. Ghost now trying to make the move on Mitchell, pulling alongside into the first corner and pulling ahead. Mitchell now under pressure from Timo Smith. Timo Smith sitting on the outside of the track at the moment, and now the inside, so he might be able to get the pass done on Dennis Mitchell as they pull alongside. Heading into sunset, and Mitchell has pulled ahead of Timo Smith. I think Timo might not be comfortable running too wide through that corner. It's so easy to get caught by your opponent if he drifts out onto the outside line. But Mitchell really struggling to keep Timo Smith at bay here as they pull alongside one another, coming around the corner. So that's going to be Timo Smith making the overtake stick on Dennis Mitchell and pulling ahead a little bit. Some really intense racing between all of these drivers. I'm just going to jump a bit back as we've got James Crook battling it out between himself and Herman Nieuwoud. Getting very close. So Tommy's unfortunately made a mistake somewhere. He's dropped down the pack. He might have gotten caught up in an accident or made one himself. But himself and Nieuwoud are hunting down Upton ahead. Just jumping back again. Dennis Mitchell 5 tenths behind Timo Smith now. And ahead of them, Melvin Ghost is starting to zero in on Craig Wesley. James Crook is still fighting off Tommy Moss. There's Mitchell closing in on Timo Smith down the main straight. Not enough to pull alongside. He's going to have to continue that battle through the rest of the corners. James Crook and Nieuwoud making the swap in the first corner. James Crook starting to pull ahead of Nieuwoud a little bit. I think their battle might have cost them. They've probably fallen about 1.5 to 2 seconds behind Ian up to now. Timo Smith falling behind a little bit. He's now behind Sean Webber. Pulling alongside Sean Webber, so they're not giving up entirely. That's all going to depend on David, although somehow Timo Smith gets way off course. and that's going to cost him positions. I think he might be having a little bit of connectivity issues. Melvin Goos fighting for 4th position with Craig Wesley. 6 tenths between them. And I can only imagine Mornay Deploy being very happy with this as he sits in 3rd position. 6 minutes left to go, plus that extra lap. I also need these drivers to finish quickly. I need to head home in time for curfew. So I'm really counting on them on finishing as soon as possible. I do apologize that I'm not going to be able to do the interviews with the post-race interviews with the drivers, but I do need to get going, and I can't drive as quick as these guys can. So, and unfortunately, I don't think people will be happy with me speeding down the R44 at breakneck speeds. Although here, I think we'll be very happy with the guys giving it full beans as Goos closes that gap even more between himself and Craig Wesley. Down to 3 tenths now. Melvin Goos smelling an opportunity and trying to set up the pass into Sunset. Although I think it might not be Sunset, but it might be a good place for him to look at something, the possibility of an overtake. Not at the moment, but then in a few corners time they do have the hairpin, so let's see what they set up heading towards that area of the circuit. And we'll see Melvin Goos just following as closely as possible behind Craig Wesley. Right, now it's all going to be about where is he going to set up his car. Goos trying to outbrake his opponent, and he runs on the inside of Craig Wesley, making the pass work on the brakes, and that's been set up very nicely from Melvin Goos there. So we were following him quite a few corners in front of that indeed. Wesley now on the fight back to regain that position from Melvin Goos. He's also going to start ringing some warning signs for Mornay Deploy, who might get caught up or start getting these guys in his rearview mirror if they're not going to be fighting anymore. Back behind, Timo Smith, a bit further behind than we saw him previously, I think. Trying to battle off Basil van Rijn behind him. 5 tenths between these drivers. In front, I also see Mornay Deploy closing in on Van Heerden, so we'll see what happens there. For now, Smith holding off 3 drivers, so it's Timo Smith, Van Rijn, and then Basil van Rijn, and then Dylan Vertaghi behind him as well. Van Rijn looking at any opportunity that he can find. They head into Sunset. Up in front, Mornay Deploy closing in on 2nd position. We're on board with Dennis Mitchell, who's very close behind Craig Wesley at the moment. Craig Wesley just looking at the back of Melvin Goos, slightly ahead of him. But the man we need to be careful for is Dennis Mitchell at the moment. So pulling onto the inside of Craig Wesley into the hairpin, and unfortunately massive amounts of of oversteer from Mitchell, so that's going to cost him the position again, and he's going to have to fall back a bit. Up in front, Mornay Deploy trying to set up a pass on Van Heerden. So we head into the last few corners of the lap. It's all going to depend on this exit. I don't think Mornay will be looking at an overtake here, but he's going to want to set himself up for a very good run through the main straight. See if he can get that pass done on Van Heerden. So we'll be keeping an eye on the time difference between those 2 drivers. You can see Van Heerden trying to pull to the middle of the track to maybe set up a bit of a defense. You can see he's pushing Monet deploy all the way to the inside of the track. But Monet, assuming a bit of a wider inside line as he gets given, as Van Heeren moves to the outside to assume the racing line, and that might have given the position to deploy. Still battling, so Monet on the outside now, and unfortunately not able to secure the pass as solidly as he wanted to, but he is looking good at the moment. Into sunset they go, and this is going to be crucial for him to extend his lead a little bit on the driver behind him. Big exit from Van Heeren there, very wide. I'm jumping ahead to Dennis Mitchell, so unfortunately Sean Webber has had a bit of an accident, so he's dropped back in the pack. And I actually wanted to jump to Dylan Versage here. You can see there he's following right behind Van Rijn, and Van Rijn completely running off track, and that's unfortunately, well, fortunately for Versage, but unfortunately for him, allowed Versage through. Then Dean van Wyk looking at the back of Tommy Leary Moss as they set up towards the hairpin on the track, and unfortunately a bit of a gap developing. Grobler now looking on the inside of Tommy Leary Moss, a little bit of a contact, no one being sent off track, and that's going to be Grobler making the pass and pulling ahead. Back in the front, Melvin Goos has caught up to Richard van Heerden, and we're going to have a battle on our hands for third position. It's the final lap. Galnhuys has crossed the line. Peter Galnhuys, Monet Deploy is going to look at securing his second position. He's just going to have to remain as consistent as possible. But the action we're going to have is between Van Heerden, who's been fighting for his lead positions for the entirety of the race, and Melvin Goos. Van Heerden is going to be very happy regardless of the position that he gets here, considering where he started. So I think it's going to be Melvin Goos trying to push him as hard as possible. You can see Van Heeren really aggressively assuming the racing line there, not wanting to give any open opportunity for Goos. As they set up towards the hairpin. So this is all going to depend on who's going to be able to brake more efficiently for this turn. And you can see Van Heeren very aware of the driver behind him. Trying to defend for all that's worth. He just needs to be careful that he doesn't weave on the track. It might set him up for a possible accident. Pulling alongside, so Melvin Goos ahead for a slight second there, but running very deep. So that's going to be Van Heeren pulling alongside him again. It's going to continue through the last few laps. And Goos is now going to drop back a little bit just to see if he can get the better exit on this last turn. But Van Heeren running a very restricted line, but that's not going to matter. It's going to give him that third position, so I think he's going to be very happy with that one indeed. So behind them, I'm just going to jump to Ian Upton as he and Sean Webber still fights. And then I'm going to jump to this a bit. So it might be a bit odd, but we've got a last lap fight for last position between Nieuwoud and Mack as they get very close to the line indeed. Still securing their position.